This is a relatively simple chapter. It deals with the chromatic notes in our musical system. But this is also a very important chapter. If you don't understand the information in this chapter, then, as with the previous chapter 5, you're going to find it very difficult to continue in this course when we start talking about chromatic scales, major and minor scales, and intervals. And if you get to triads in this course as well, you really need to understand the concept of chromatic notes. By the end of this chapter, you should understand the concept of chromatic notes, what a half step is, what accidentals are, and enharmonics, as well as why we need enharmonics in our musical system. Our Western scales are composed of 12 chromatic notes that repeat at the octave. You already know about 7 of the notes, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Well, in between those notes, we can include accidentals to raise those pitches by a half step. This is where those black keys begin to become very important because they allow us to play chromatic notes in our system. When we play all 12 pitches in our musical system, we're said to be playing a chromatic succession of pitches. So if you play from one piano key to the next, from a white to a black key in most cases, and sometimes from a white to a white key, those are half steps. But if you play every single key on the piano without skipping any of the keys, you're playing half steps. So accidentals are symbols that are used to identify whether one of the 7 notes from the musical alphabet is higher, lower, or should be played without any change to the original pitch. That last point is important because once you make a pitch or a note in a piece sharp or flat, if you want to make it natural again, return it to its default pitch, then you need to use a natural sign within the same measure. And that's something we'll get into more later on. The important thing for you to know right now is that accidentals use symbols known as sharps, flats, or naturals. With enharmonics, sometimes 2 notes will have the same pitch. They'll sound the same, but they will use different notes. This is a more complicated concept, but I'm going to show you how to understand enharmonics using the piano keyboard. So let's start with half steps. The piano keyboard can be used to easily see half steps. If you start on C, any C on the piano, and you move to that first black key immediately to the right of it, that's a half step. Then you move up to the D. That's another half step. Move up to the D sharp, the next black key. That is also a half step. And then from the black key in between D and E to the note E, or to the key E on the piano, that is also a half step. Now this is where it does get a little bit interesting, because between E and F there is no black key, but the distance between E and F is still a half step. So you need to understand that. That's something that's going to come into play later on. A lot of students get confused because they think there's an E sharp. Well, you don't know what a sharp or flat is yet necessarily, but there are no black keys in between E and F. We're going to leave it at that for now, and this will become more clear as we continue through the lecture. Another place on the keyboard where there is no black key is between the notes B and C. So for now, you need to memorize that between E and F and B and C, the distance between those 2 sets of pitches is 1 half step because there is no black key. That's what you should take away from this right now, as well as moving from one key to the next on the piano keyboard is always going to be a half step. So now I'm going to show you what each of these symbols looks like. So accidentals raise, lower, or neutralize pitches. They're placed in front of the note. They're never placed after the note. You must always place the accidental in front of the note. The reason people get confused is because when referring to a note, you reverse the order. You say the note name first. So in the first example for in the treble clef, I would call that an F sharp, not a sharp F. So it's a little bit confusing because the way they're written and the way we pronounce them is reversed. We say F sharp, but we write sharp F. So hopefully that's clear. The F in the image can be played with the first black key in the triple set of black keys between F and G. So look at the piano keyboard, find F and G, and then locate that black key right in between F and G. That's an F sharp. Flats lower the pitch by 1/2 step. So the flat symbol looks like a little B. So the F in the image, the second image, can be played with the note E on the piano, since this is a note that is 1/2 step lower than F. So if you find F and you see that in the music you have a flat in front of it, that means you have to lower it by a 1/2 step. So going one key down from F, you find that the only option is E. Remember, there is no actual F flat on the piano, so if you see an F flat in music, they're telling you to play the note E. So naturals cancel a sharp or flat. So if I have an F flat or an F sharp in my music and I want to make it natural again, I use the natural sign, which you can see in the third image. So the first image is a sharp sign. It looks like a pound sign. The second image looks like a small b. And the third image is kind of that rectangular double 7 line. You got a 7 that's upside down and then another 7 that's written the correct way. So that is a natural sign. Memorize what these look like and know how they affect the pitch of notes. Now we're going to also talk about double sharps and flats. You're not going to see these two common, but it may occur in this course or in music that you're playing on your own. So we know that accidentals raise, lower, or neutralize pitches, and then they're placed in front of the note. If you have a double sharp, it raises the pitch 2 half steps or 1 whole step, and it looks like an X in the music. The second example below you is actually an example of an F double sharp written on the staff system, assuming we are in the treble clef. If we're in the bass clef, then that's an A double sharp. So this also shows you why the clef is such an important concept and why it's required so that we can identify our notes. The F double sharp, if you look on the piano, F double sharp is the same note as G on the piano because you have to go up 2 half steps. Remember, 2 half steps is 1 whole step. So first you go to the first black key above F, and then you go up 1 more. That makes you arrive on G. So if you had an A double sharp, you'd have to go up first to the black key between A and B, and then you'd land on B. So an A double sharp would be played with the note B. And if you had an E double sharp, you'd actually end up playing the first key in the triple set of black keys. So go up from E 1 half step, that takes you to F. 1 more half step takes you to F sharp, the first black key. So E double sharp would actually be the same note as F sharp. And there's a reason why composers will notate it one way or the other, even though it'd be probably easier to just write F sharp. Sometimes you need an F double sharp because in music theory, the note you use can identify the structure of the piece, resolutions, and other advanced concepts that you don't have to worry about in this course. But the way you write it does matter, and that's why we have different ways of writing the same thing. So flats, if you have a double flat, it lowers a pitch by 2 half steps or 1 whole step. They're the same thing. 2 half steps equal 1 whole step. And a double flat is 2 little B's right next to each other, almost on top of each other. And you can see an example of that in the first image on the bottom there. So if we're in the treble clef, and that's an F double flat, we first go to our piano, we find F. We go down 1 half step to get E, and then 1 more half step to get that black key in between D and E. So that's actually called an E flat if we're going down. So F double flat is the same exact note as E flat. So let's try another one. A double flat. What note is that on the piano? Go ahead and take a second and try and figure it out. So you find A, you move down a half step to that middle black key in the triple set, and then you end up on G. So A double flat is G. Let's do one more. Let's do D double flat. what note would you play on the piano to play D double flat? So how do you figure it out? You find D, any D on the piano, because I haven't told you how high or low to play this D. You go down one half step, so you play that note right in between C and D, and then you go down one more half step and you arrive at C. So if I tell you to play a D double flat on the piano, you look for C on the piano, that's the note you want to play. So let's just do one with sharps to make sure you understand this concept. Let's do D double sharp. So you find your D on the piano, it's right in between the double set of black keys, and then you go up two half steps, or two keys on the piano. So your first one is the black key in between D and E. Your next half step is from the black key between D and E to E itself. So if I tell you to play D double sharp, you're actually playing an E. Now it's time to talk about a concept that always confuses students, but it's not that difficult of a concept once you understand how the piano keyboard works. And that concept is enharmonics. An enharmonic is one pitch that is notated in two possible ways. So remember, pitch refers to the sound, not what it looks like on the staff. And notation refers to the actual written notes, or the note on the staff. So both notes, if they are enharmonic to each other, will have the same pitch, but they may look different when written down on the staff system. One example, if you look at C sharp on the piano keyboard below, C sharp and D flat both use the black key in between the C and the D white keys. This makes C sharp and D flat the same pitch, even though they are different notes. So if you look at that, C sharp and D flat, if you're going down, you might choose to use D flat. If you're going from D down to C and you want to play the note in between, you might choose to use D flat. If you're going up from C to D, you might choose C sharp. But really, enharmonics are important because we have a thing known as key signatures, and there's 15 of them. And depending on whether you're using a flat key signature or a sharp key signature, you'll want to use one enharmonic over the other. So while this is a concept you probably won't understand yet, if we have a key that uses the note D flat in it, where every note in the piece is a D flat, to simplify this, that's not really how it works, but let's just say that every note in every D in the key of D flat uses a D flat, then you would want to use the D flat note instead of C sharp, so it would fit the key. Now this is a complex topic, so for now, the best way to think about this is that the black keys and some of the white keys tend to have two different possible spellings. So if you look at the keyboard here, you see all the possible spellings. The most common ones are the two sets of black keys where you got D flat and C sharp on the first set, and then E flat and D sharp on the second black key. Then you have F sharp and G flat. They're the same pitch because they're the same note, they're the same key on the piano. G sharp and A sharp and B flat. These are all going to be the same pitches. So if I say play a B flat or play an A sharp, both notes would be the same key. One thing where it gets a little bit tricky is E is actually the note F flat. So if I say play an F flat, you got to go down a half step and you'll play E. So F flat and E are actually the same exact pitch. Same goes for E sharp and F, as well as C flat and B sharp and C. If any of these are confusing to you, then what you need to understand is that enharmonics are simply two notes that share the same pitch. So two notes, they'll be written differently on the staff system, but when you play them, they'll sound the same. And we have all of the most common enharmonics that you need to know in this class written below. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 enharmonics to memorize. So this is something that you need to memorize. Make sure you do, so that when we get into some of the more advanced topics, it'll be easier for you to understand this. Now, For those of you interested to know why we have enharmonics, that's something that we really have to reserve for a discussion of major and minor scales, because to discuss it now would probably just confuse a lot of people. So for now, memorize your enharmonics and learn how to identify chromatic notes on the staff system, and you should be doing really well at this point for the unit if you understand this content.